Right now, somewhere in your home, there is a tap. You can walk to it, turn a handle, and drink. The water that comes out has been filtered, treated, tested, and monitored. It will not kill you. You have never once in your life had to think about whether the water you drink might kill you. For 99% of human history, that was the only thing people thought about. Dirty water has killed more human beings than every war ever fought. More than every plague, more than every famine, more than every predator, and every earthquake and every natural disaster combined. The invisible things living in contaminated water shaped the rise and fall of civilizations, determined where cities could be built, and quietly ended the lives of children before they were old enough to walk. And ancient humans had to survive it anyway. How they did that, the things they figured out, the mistakes they made, and the one thing they got spectacularly, catastrophically wrong, changes everything you think you know about the history of drinking water. The moment humans stopped moving, the water started killing them. For hundreds of thousands of years, humans were nomadic, hunter-gatherers who followed food and water across landscapes, never staying in one place long enough to poison their own supply. When you drink from a stream and move on, the stream recovers. When you relieve yourself in the forest and walk away, the land absorbs it. Then, around 10,000 years ago, humans discovered agriculture, and everything changed. When you settle, you need a permanent water source. And when you settle near that water source, you also eat near it, cook near it, bathe near it, and relieve yourself near it. The animals you now keep do the same. Your waste and their waste finds its way into the ground, into the rivers, into the wells you dug specifically to escape the contaminated rivers. The very act of building a civilization created the conditions that made water deadly. Before agriculture, waterborne disease was relatively rare. After agriculture, it became the single greatest killer in human history. Dysentery, typhoid, cholera, diseases caused by the invisible transfer of human and animal waste into the thing you needed to drink to stay alive. You built a city. The city poisoned its own water, and then everyone in the city drank from it because there was nothing else. Here is something no one tells you in school. For most of human history, the most common response to the danger of dirty water was not to purify it, it was to drink something else instead. In ancient Egypt, the drink of choice was beer. Thin, low-alcohol barley beer that the entire population drank from morning until night, including children. In ancient Greece, it was wine. In ancient Mesopotamia, beer again, so fundamental to daily life that workers were literally paid in it. In medieval Europe, it was ale. They were not drunk, they were surviving. The fermentation process that makes alcohol also kills bacteria. Ancient people didn't know why. They had no concept of bacteria, no germ theory, no microscope, but they had noticed over generations that people who drank water got sick in ways that people who drank beer did not. In 1854, a cholera outbreak in London killed 500 people in 1 month. Investigators discovered that workers at the brewery at the epicenter of the outbreak did not get sick. Not a single one. They had been drinking beer all day, every day. Their colleagues who drank from the contaminated street pump were dying. The brewery workers were fine. A 5th century Greek medical text recommended adding wine to even the finest water before drinking it. Not for flavor, for safety, because even water that looked clean, tasted clean, and smelled clean could still be dangerous. And a splash of wine was the closest thing they had to a guarantee. The Romans solved the source problem on a scale the world would not see again for over 1,000 years. Between 312 BC and 455 AD, Rome built 11 major aqueducts. Stone channels, tunnels, and elevated bridges that carried fresh water from sources up to 57 miles outside the city. By the height of the empire, every one of Rome's 1 million citizens had access to running water. Public fountains flowed 24 hours a day. The poorest citizen in Rome had access to more fresh water per day than most people on Earth today. They even had a water commissioner, the curator aquarum, whose entire job was managing the city's water supply. Water management in ancient Rome was not primitive improvisation. It was administration, but here's where the story gets dark. Rome's water arrived clean, then it traveled through the city in pipes. And those pipes were made of lead. The Latin word for lead is plumbum. The craftsmen who worked with it were called plumbari. That is where our word plumbing comes from. And for centuries, those pipes carried water made deadly not by bacteria, but by the pipes themselves. Julius Caesar's own architect Vitruvius wrote in 25 BC that water from clay pipes was far healthier than water from lead pipes. That lead was harmful to the human body. He wrote this down, he published it, people read it, and then they kept using lead pipes anyway, because lead was cheap, easy to shape, and didn't rust. Because the Roman plumbing industry was enormous, and changing it would cost a fortune. Because the effects of lead poisoning build slowly, and in a world without modern medicine, it was nearly impossible to trace declining health back to a specific cause. Researchers have found that lead levels in Roman tap water were up to 100 times higher than in local spring water. Some historians argue that lead poisoning contributed to cognitive decline among the Roman ruling class. 2/3 of Roman emperors between 30 BC and 220 AD showed symptoms consistent with chronic lead exposure: erratic behavior, poor judgment, neurological deterioration. Nero, Caligula, men who were, quite possibly, being slowly poisoned by their own plumbing. This is the pattern that repeats throughout water history. A civilization solves one problem and creates another. A solution becomes so embedded in the infrastructure that no one can change it, even when someone notices it is causing harm. They see the damage, they name it, they write it down, and they keep using lead pipes. Ancient people understood water quality far more than we give them credit for. They just couldn't see the enemy they were fighting. In India, Sanskrit texts from around 2000 BC described boiling water, filtering it through charcoal, and storing it in copper vessels. Copper has genuine antimicrobial properties. It actually kills pathogens. Ancient Indians didn't know about pathogens. They knew that copper vessels kept water better. That was enough. In Egypt, physicians were using alum by 1500 BC to treat cloudy water. Alum causes suspended particles to clump together and sink, leaving the water above it clearer. This process, coagulation, is still used in modern water treatment today. Hippocrates invented the Hippocratic sleeve, a cloth bag to filter water before boiling it. He recommended this for his patients: clean water as medicine. The idea that the quality of water a sick person drank was connected to how well they recovered. He was right. He just couldn't explain why, because germ theory was 2,300 years in the future. The germ theory of disease was not established until the 1850s. John Snow proved waterborne transmission during the 1854 London cholera outbreak by mapping the deaths and tracing them to a single contaminated street pump. He removed the pump handle. The outbreak stopped. That was 1854, 1400 years after the fall of Rome. For all of that time, the water infrastructure of most of the world got worse, not better. The aqueducts crumbled. Medieval cities grew up along rivers they used simultaneously as water sources and sewers. London's Thames in the 18th and 19th centuries was essentially an open channel of human waste. People drank from it. Typhoid killed thousands of Americans annually into the 1920s. Cholera killed millions in epidemic waves throughout the 1800s. Not ancient people. People who lived in cities with newspapers and universities and industrialized economies. Chlorine was first added to a municipal water supply in 1908 in New Jersey. Within a decade, typhoid deaths in American cities dropped by over 90%. The single act of adding a chemical to the water supply prevented more deaths than almost any other public health intervention in history. Everything that came before, the beer, the boiling, the copper vessels, the aqueducts, the alum, the Hippocratic sleeve, it was 10,000 years of humanity fighting an enemy it could not see, with tools it could not fully understand, getting some things right, getting some things catastrophically wrong, and surviving anyway. The tap you turned on this morning is the end of that 10,000 year chain. Every ancient person who noticed that boiled water was safer, that copper kept water better, that a source upstream of the city was cleaner than the river running through it, they are somewhere in the line that led to the water you drank today without thinking about it. They did the thinking for you for thousands of years so that you wouldn't have to.